Thank you. Yes, that was great. Thank you very much, Peter. I'm Anthony Barnes. I was the first. I didn't start Charter 88, but I was the first director of it, and I was part of the group that helped to write it in the offices of the then New Statesman. I would like to open by thanking both Peter and Bethan, who's here, for the work that went into this book. I imagine that it's not often that you have the Prime Minister writing chapters of books that you're launching here in Houghton's, but it's a very interesting collection in the sense that there's sort of reflections on how the Charter itself began and why it made the impact it did, and then there's a set of essays by including the current three leaders of the main political parties, and it's very interesting to look at there was this sovereignty lecture given for Charter 88 by Gordon Brown, and there's the sort of skillful introduction that he's now written to it, which is saying that although obviously he is, has moved on, as one might say, or moved off, and nonetheless this presents him as having in no way whatsoever changed his mind. But it does raise the profile, and it does make you realise what quite a lot about what has happened, and also what hasn't. And I was asked to reflect on that particular moment and compare and contrast it in a way to what's going on today. And it's sort of when you're buried in the history of something like that, it's quite difficult to try and simplify those two moments. But I think if we take the point that Peter was making, the metaphor, the analogy of the car, and as the British state, when the Charter began, I think what happened was that there was a sense of in 1987-88 that was the zenith of Thatcher, and the left felt after the 87 election completely helpless. And the actual origins of it came about, in terms of, well, it was the anniversary of 1968, now the real anniversary is 1688, and so for those who are not familiar, a big adverts appeared in the Guardian, the Independent, but coming out of the New Statesman, saying we need a democratic written constitution, 1,500 words, sort of thing which any advertising executive would tell you is absolutely hopeless and should never be run as a full page in a newspaper. And thousands of people up and down the country looked at this and said, yes, that's what we want. So there was a moment, there was a sense of something of a breakthrough. It spoke to something where people just said, we are in an impasse here, and here is a potential way out. And one aspect of that way out was it looked at the country, the way we were governed as a whole. It wasn't, although it had different demands in it for freedom of information, for a Scottish Parliament, for a Bill of Rights, which different organisations were supporting, it put that together into a certain picture, and it spoke to people. And one of the messages that then came out from that was that we should become citizens, not subjects. A phrase which was then repeated by the Gordon Brown who gave this lecture. And what this did in a way was it connected various campaigns, and it allowed people to say, we want to be governed in a different way. And that then took off, so to speak, as an organisation, because it represented a way forward for the Labour Party, which was absolutely stuck and looking for how to move forward. And that then fed into the modernisation of the Labour Party. It fed into part of the energy of New Labour. Primarily through John Smith, who gave the Charter 88 lecture, which committed the Labour Party to a Bill of Rights and so on. But I just want to tell one story about this, because it was a very striking. We've just held this event, which I've been looking back on, the Convention on Modern Liberty in the Logan Hall, which is a big complex in Bloomsbury, just down the road. And we had this series of sovereignty lectures after the first one was before the '92 election, and Gordon Brown gave it, and then there were 3 after them. And the way we ran these lectures was that we would have one speaker with a panel who would then lead a discussion. So Will Hutton was part of it, and Helena Kennedy, or the young Will Hutton and Helena Kennedy were part of the panel debating Gordon Brown. And one of the ones afterwards was held by, Shirley Williams spoke, and somebody said to me, you know, you should invite this young man, Tony Blair, he seems to be on the up. And so he was on this panel, and there were about 700 people at this thing, which I thought was rather a low number compared to Gordon Brown, who got about 800 people. And when he came out of the meeting, Blair said to me, who I'd never sort of met before, he said, "Where did all these people come from?" So I said, "Well, you know, it was a Charter 88 meeting." And he said, "Come and see me." And this wasn't a particularly I mean, we went to see him, but it wasn't a particularly pleasant meeting. I mean, he's kind of I suppose I'm glad to say something in the chemistry of him and me didn't work. But the point was that he picked up and he understood that there was an energy, that this was addressing a discontent which he should pick up on and use. And I hadn't understood the depth of the cynicism, the obsession, pure obsession with office that was behind Blair, and which then became behind New Labour. But nonetheless, there was a skill of sensing that there was an energy, that something was moving, and that this was part of the road out of the impasse that Labour faced. And one of the things that I talk about in my essay here is I talk about the Lib Dems and how the Lib Dems didn't have that same sense of energy and the future. But there was a problem with Charter 88, if you put it this way. And the way you could say it is that what the Charter did was it addressed the political class. And it said to the political class as a whole, but in particular to Labour, but not just to Labour, look, the way this country is governed, the car, is not just that you know, it's wrong that it should be so centralised, but also it's a clapped-out Victorian machine which isn't functioning properly. And you need a modern democratic constitution, and it will be a much better country, in a way a more European country. So it was addressed in that sense. Somebody, I think one of the essays written about it, said it was a kind of democratic elitist organisation. It was a democratic organisation, but it was also saying, here is the energy, modelled itself on Greenpeace. It wasn't a membership organisation, and it said it offered this way of cleaning up the political environment by transforming the way in which we are governed. And it was also saying, because we can talk to regular people in this language, which you didn't think you could, because you can talk about the Constitution, actually there is a kind of public language which we can make available and which will help this transformation to take place.